In a previous video I had this script here, an Ansible script called enable FTP, and the job of this script was to go out and push a small snippet of config like this one out to a number of devices, and that seemed to work okay, but Ansible playbook enable ftp.yaml, that seems to work okay, except that I get this pink error message saying there's a deprecation warning about this Junos install config part of the Juniper modules that I'm using. It's been kept for backwards compatibility, but its usage is discouraged. Maybe we need to revise the script because it's obviously got slightly out of date. So if I go to, so I can see that this is succeeding basically, so it is obviously working. It checks the netconf connection to the 3 routers. It goes off and tries to install that piece of config. Actually it doesn't need to because it's already installed, so it just comes up green, and then I get an OK for each of the hosts. But I want to get rid of this pink thing because what are we on? Ansible version, I think we're on 2.7, yeah, 2.7. So if I look at the Ansible network module documentation, that's the 2.7 module documentation, and we'll look for the Juniper part of that. There's a lot of modules. So I can see this Junos install config thing is what I'm looking for, but there isn't such a thing in this list of possible things to do. Junos config looks quite promising, so let's have a look at that. Provides an implementation for working with the active configuration running on Junos devices, so that's great. So let's have a look at enable ftp.yaml. Here's the script itself. This is just a plain English name. It's operating on a list of hosts that are under the MX grouping. So if I bring if I get another terminal window going, bring that in. Let's see, vim hosts. This is the inventory file. It's got nested groups in this inventory file, so I've grouped things into EX, SRX and MX, and then it's a bit like an ini file in a Windows machine really. Here is my group of MXs, so I can operate on just those and exclude the EXs fairly easily, so that's quite a nice way to do it. This is also where I'm defining the username that is used to connect to the devices. I'm using public key authentication, so I just need to pass the username, and because the device already has my SSH key on it, I just get connected straight away. But anyway, so those are the list of devices that we're going to be operating on. It pulls in the Juniper role, makes a local connection because there's no Python running on the remote host. It makes a local connection and then it pushes the results out over netconf. We're not gathering facts about the device because we're making a local connection to ourselves. This is a timeout value to kill the process, to kill the script if nothing's happening. And then there are two tasks, checking the netconf connection and loading the config. So we're just going to go in here and see if we can remove the word install from here and see if that works. Might as well modify the name of the task as well. And so the config snippet is in that ftp.conf I showed you earlier. The host it's going to operate on is the inventory underscore hostname, which is a sort of an internal Ansible variable. So that'll be one of those 3 hosts. So if I just run that script again, we'll see what happens this time around. 3 good netconf connections as expected. Oh, okay. So we now have some more errors. It's complaining firstly that there's an unknown host key for two of these hosts. So let's do, so if we look in vim ansible.cfg, I've just remembered that we are not checking host keys. So when the device passes us back a host key, the default Ansible behavior is to check it, and it's sometimes useful in testing just to disable that. So let's see if we've got rid of those errors by disabling host key checking. In a production environment, you probably would want to check the host keys properly, but in a lab environment perhaps that doesn't matter. So we've got rid of that unknown host key message. Now we're getting a message saying the parameter host is deprecated. So we look back in this Junos config and we'll look at the parameters that we can pass to it, and the host parameter is apparently a required one, but I've got a feeling that if we look at our enable ftp.yaml, if we look at our script, we've got the list of hosts specified here. I'm not sure we need this line inventory underscore hostname, because it already knows what it's operating on, so we're just going to delete that line. That worked before, but since I updated my Ansible Junos modules, it seems not to be. So let's try it again. Let's see what happens this time around. Some of these errors are quite helpful. They are trying to point you in the right direction. So when you see a big block of red text like this, there's no need to be too frightened about it. So we've got rid of this pink line here, so that seems to be okay. I reckoned, this was a guess really, removing that host thing, because it was obviously understanding it needed to talk to these three things. So it was just a guess, and that seems to have worked. But now we've got this unsupported parameters for Junos underscore config module. Supported parameters include these things. So we just have a look at this. Also, we could use this lines parameter instead of. So what the current script pulls in a separate config file, but we could probably do a list of set or delete commands. So if we do, if we have a look again, vim ftp.conf, it's nothing very complicated. Set system services ftp. So if we did vim enable ftp.yaml, let's just say we won't do this, and instead we will lines. Actually, let's have a look at the documentation to see if there's an example that might help us. There we go. Just here, lines with a colon, set system services FTP. Let's check that again. We only need 2 spaces there, and we only need 2 indents there, and 2 indents there, and right, and quit that. So now that's all a bit more neat. So we don't need this ftp.conf file anymore here. Let's see if that works. Fingers crossed. That isn't working at all. So lines, the offending line appears to be set system services FTP. there should be a tab. Okay, we're using spaces. That's a bit dumb. Let's take that out. Tab. Error appears to be found it. Oh, so we're using tabs and we shouldn't be. This is one of the slightly more tiresome aspects of writing YAML, is that you've got to get it exactly right with the space indentation. Let's see if this works. Bingo. So if I just SSH, we're just going to I'm just going to remove the FTP service off one of these routers. It takes a little while to commit because it's getting a bit old. So now we'll run our script again. And hopefully we'll see that, so these green, the tasks come up green when no change needs to be made. Hopefully we will see that .63 has a change that needs to be made, and that is enabling the FTP service. So we'll see that pop up in yellow. It takes a little bit longer because it needs to commit the change. But eventually that will come back to us. Oh dear, changed. So, let's see. Command timeout triggered. Okay. Well, that's not a very helpful message. Oh, it's a 10-second timeout. Okay. So see the timeout settings in network debug and troubleshooting. So perhaps we need to make that timeout. Let's see. Let's see if we can make that timeout. Timeout is default as 10. So we need to make that longer. Have we got any examples? Lines and that's quite useful. You can put a comment. Well, in fact, let's just edit this, and we should be able to put timeout 20. See what happens now. Well, I haven't messed up the syntax this time around, at least. The parameter timeout is now deprecated. Well, and we got 3 OKs then, so I can only assume that when it failed this time around, it was just about to succeed, but Ansible gave up waiting. It's an old MX5, I think, so the commit time is quite slow. But anyway, I'm now going to have to go and research why this timeout parameter has been deprecated. I think I'll leave that for another session. But hopefully this kind of illustrates how you might be able to do some troubleshooting when your scripts get slightly out of date, and with any luck it'll be useful to somebody. Thanks for watching.